Why is our debt so high? This is it. $236 billion for charge.
What do you talk? That's a huge number, Joe.
Oh, excuse me. $40 billion.
We dropped that by a factor of 10. Okay.
What's that, Jamie?
According to this, they haven't actually spent all that money yet.
Well, what do they do with it?
Wait, how has Jamie not been f***ing kicked out of this program? Oh, no. Jamie's bringing up, hey, bro, this money is just allocated. It's not actually spent yet.
That hasn't been allocated yet. It's a long article going through all the spending that's been done.
Wait, but who's the article? Fact check. Sounds like liberal bias. I'm going to rely on Brett. Can you please come out here and let them know that fact checkers are liberally biased, please?
Fact.org.
Factcheck.org. Who runs that?
I don't know. Some of the
Great to see you, Joe.
Wild times.
Almost unbelievable.
Yeah. The last time you were here, we were really worried about what was going to happen. And now it's...
Wait, you were really worried, but now everything is okay. So then you were... I don't remember. Does Rogan pretend to be a centrist, or is he honest about the fact that he like super supported Trump? Is he honest about that yet, or do we still...
Seems like we're in a completely different timeline.
Yeah, I have to say, in addition to being just overarchingly worried about what was going to happen to the Republic and to the globe, I was personally worried about what would happen.
Oh, he did officially endorse him? The other day said he's not a right-winger? Yeah, I feel like he goes back and forth on that, but who knows?
And to people like you and me if we lost.
Yeah. Probably.
Oh, my God. Wait.
To the globe, I was personally...
Brett Weinstein's the dumb one, right? His brother is like a smarter version of Terrence Howard.
Worried about what would happen to people like you and me if we lost.
Like, I'm worried about what would happen... Like, you know Biden was president for 4 years, and you know nothing happened, right? Like, how can you be so f***ing retarded? And when I say how can you, I mean you, the audience. Maybe not you, my audience. Sometimes you guys. How do people listen to this and like, yeah, that's a good point, bro. Who knows what would have happened if a Democrat would have been in power? They were for 4 years. Nothing happened to you. Nothing at all happened. Now that Trump is in power, he sued like 5+ different people for saying mean things about him. That's what's happened. So what the f*** are we talking about here? What are we talking about here?
Yeah. Probably wouldn't be so good for business.
Oh, he's laughing because he knows how retarded they're being, because he knows it's a big joke. Okay.
They probably would have cracked down.
There's that, but I must say, on my darker days, I had concerns even beyond that. And
you probably should.
Yeah.
Yeah, in light of what we now know. You know, it's this U.S. aid thing that's going on. You know, Mike Benz has been on that like a pit bull, and I've been following him on X, and he's going to come back on here and kind of explain everything. But he explained it the last time he was here, and I don't think I really grasped it until Elon's 6 wizards. He brought in some young wizards to go in there and go over the books, and they're just finding crazy shit. It's great, and it's so interesting. I was listening to a left-wing podcast today. I like to mix it up. You know, I listen to all kinds of different...
I like to mix it up. So I was listening to this left-wing podcast. It's co-hosted by RFK and Tulsi Gabbard, my 2 favorite liberals. So I was listening to them talk.
Different stuff, and it was like I was listening to a different world. Like, they weren't even talking about all of this corruption and all this obvious buying of influence. Instead, they were talking about aid overseas and how people are going to starve. And like,
it's mind-boggling. And there's also, I have to say, I'm upset at the general pattern of a failure to recognize how right those of us who hypothesized that there was a racket that had overtaken our entire governance structure, we turn out to be absolutely right about.
Just as none of this is true. This is all f***ing retarded. Like, all of the spending for USAID was already publicly listed. All of this has been authorized by Congress. Like, this is almost as much as a non-story as the Twitter files, which also showed nothing. That for some reason people claim that it did, but it didn't. So
this, and no one's going to mention it. That's mind-blowing.
It's very strange that the media is ignoring it, especially the left-wing media. It's just too big of a win for the right And so they're just ignoring it. And then they're just highlighting the good things that USAID did, which I'm sure it probably did. Probably had to do some good things to...
Is everything in USAID congressionally approved? I mean, their funding has to come from Congress, right? Congress approves funding for programs. If you find something that's not congressionally approved, then they should point it out. But the problem is that they don't even know what the process is for anything. They just think that like if they spend money, then it's bad. But like if you see some kind of funding, then you should, like if you were actually, oh my God. If you want to know if spending is bad, then you should find something being spent by this executive agency, and then you should ask or figure out like, well, what part of Congress authorized this funding? And then you should find either the statute or the federal rule or whatever that directed the money here, and then you should find out did this comport with whatever, that this would be the process for figuring out if you think that some funding is improper or not. That would be the process for doing it. Going line by line, going, just makes you a fucking retard. But it doesn't matter because these guys love retards, so who cares? I don't even, it's not even worth going over the process.
Like at least justify its existence while it's...
As a cover story, I'm not even sure. Maybe it doesn't change anything. Obviously, this was a mechanism used to funnel money to all sorts of things that we didn't vote on, that don't make sense in light of our constitutional structure.
Holy fuck, go back to teaching grade schoolers. God, he's so stupid.
You know, I obviously have concerns like everybody else about where this train takes us, but seeing that structure broken up it's a huge relief.
They gave $27 million to the George Soros Prosecutor Fund. So our own government...
Is there any way to undo this, though, as in have someone file a suit for a wrongful process of defunding some of these bodies? It's the federal government. I mean, if they defund them, what the f*** are they going to do? They already know they're not supposed to. I think, aren't they already ignoring TROs? Or did they actually stop some of the federal funding freezes or whatever? Like, here's the easy question. Here's the easy question, and the only one you really need to ask. And that is, okay, some of this funding was improper, like frauding or defrauding the government, or it was fraudulently spent or whatever. Who's being charged for the crime? But ask that. That's like the show. Who would be charging with the crime then? Show me who committed the crime here. Otherwise, this is all bullshit, which this is all bullshit, and nobody's going to be charged with a crime.
Is funding this left-wing lunatic who is hiring the most insane prosecutors who are letting people out of jail who commit violent crimes.
And that's exactly how this racket worked, is that the ability to tax the American public and then effectively get us to pay for being propagandized, for being surveilled, that's the game. And I don't know what era we could...
What is he talking about? The USAID, I think, had a $50 billion, was it $30 or $50 billion budget? Tons of money goes out from USAID to all sorts of different NGOs, to other countries, to aid groups, to whatever. So what they do is they'll just find like a thing where it's like this money went to this thing that is tied to this guy, and therefore it was like corrupt. But like they'll never tell you any of the details of like anything that's going on. This is all just like the most retarded shit in the universe, basically.
Currently live in. Obviously, there's a lot that's confusing about what the Trump administration is up to, but I don't think any reasonable person could be unhappy that we are exiting that era.
I'm going to read off some of the things that this guy Kanakota the Great on Twitter listed, and this is off the Jesse Water Show. USAID, $20 million for Iraqi Sesame Street, $2 million for Moroccan pottery classes, $11 million to tell Vietnam to stop burning trash, $27 million to give gift bags to illegals, $27 million, $330 million to help Afghanis grow crops. Crops. I wonder what those crops are. What's their biggest crop, Brett?
It's going to be the poppy seeds for bagels, I'm thinking.
$200 million on an unused Afghani dam, $250 million on an unused Afghani road. This is wild. I mean, some of this stuff is really, really crazy.
Well, yes, and, you know, USAID is, of course, riddled through whatever international madness it is that caused us to open our southern border and facilitate an invasion.
As numbers across a single year of the agency's existence, I don't know. My guess is somebody can link me the tweet, we can go line by line. But my guess is when you go through all of these, there's going to be like a broad like program or something that's being funded that is also probably congressionally approved. Fuck me. Hold on one sec. We're gonna get somebody. Hold on. Somebody can find me the link to whatever has the most of that shit. Hold on. At USAID, waste and abuse runs deep. For decades, the U.S. Agency for International Development has been unaccountable to taxpayers as it funnels massive sums of money to the ridiculous and in many cases malicious pet projects. Here are a few examples. Okay. All right. Well, at least they sourced, I guess, what they're talking about, so they should make it pretty easy, I guess. Why does our government have to source the Daily Mail? Why can't they just like point to their own documents? It's a Daily Mail, Daily Mail, Daily Mail, Daily Mail, Daily Mail, Daily Caller. This is a .gov thing at least. This was in 2019 though, under Trump. This is your government, dog. The United States and Egypt through the U.S. Agency for International Development signed a bilateral assistance agreement amendment worth $6 million that demonstrates continued support from the American people for joint U.S.-Egypt priorities. This agreement will increase educational opportunities, strengthen the livelihoods of the people of North Sinai. The amendment of the to the North Sinai Bilateral Assistance Agreement supports the Egyptian government's efforts to spur inclusive economic development in the government. Through this agreement, USAID will build on previous investments in the North. Sinai includes provision of potable water to 300,000 residents and wastewater services to 100,000 residents. New activities under this amendment will provide access to transportation for rural communities and economic livelihood programming for families. What did they say this was on the website? Hundreds of thousands of dollars for a nonprofit linked to designated terrorist organizations. Even after an inspector general launched an investigation. So the Office of Inspector General was already looking into this, but okay. Millions to EcoHealth Alliance, which was involved in research at the Wuhan lab. Wow, okay. Hundreds of thousands of meals went to Al-Qaeda affiliated fighters in Syria. Does that count as everybody who is against Assad? Oh wait, Americans paid for hundreds of thousands of meals went to Al-Qaeda affiliated fighters in Syria. Federal prosecutors revealed in announcing charges against the non-governmental organization employee who they say was responsible for the diversion. So this doesn't sound like money that was approved for them. It sounds like money that was stolen.
Through the Darien Gap. So, seeing that structure laid bare it almost feels like it can't be real. Like it can't
crazy.
Have been this close to the surface, and yet here we are.
They were spending, is this number correct? I think the number that I read was $600 million every 2 months to ship in illegals?
Sounds right. I don't know the number offhand.
Like, what does that mean? To ship in illegals? Does he really think there was a government program to just bring illegal immigrants in to vote illegally, huh? That's how we won 2020, I guess.
But
what the fuck?
Well, you have to realize that basically we had a shadow apparatus.
You mean like what we have now? Was the shadow apparatus when all of this was publicly available information that everybody knew about?
Functioning, and it involves all kinds of things. It involves payoffs to people who didn't deserve them. It involves contracting to entities that were necessary to get the work done. So I don't think we can properly understand what these numbers mean and what they're actually being used for, but it was a racket.
Well, we were always wondering, why is our debt so high? Why is the national debt so high?
What are you talking about? Even if all this money was being stolen, this would barely make a scratch in our debt. But never mind. I mean, the implication is that they're going to find so much more, right? What is the entire USAID budget? Is it $30 billion?
Why is our deficit so insane? Well, this is it. I mean, the one, how about the one where they paid 236?
What is the optimal number of illegals coming to the USA daily you want? I think around 1,600 is the optimal number. The same number of people that got pardoned for trying to insurrect our government, I think, should come in illegally every day.
$6 billion. Like, well, this is it. I mean, the one, how about the one where they paid $236 billion, like, for chargers? Do you know that they were trying to set up chargers?
You mean
What are you talking? That's a huge number, Joe. What are you talking about? $236 billion? What is he talking? What is he even talking about? Is this like money appropriated to an entire infrastructure project for like a decade? Or that's like what is that, a third of our military budget? What are we talking about?
car chargers, and they only built a couple of them?
Excuse me. $40 billion for electric carports.
Okay, we dropped that by a factor of 10. Okay.
8 ports have been built. You know how crazy that is? $40 billion for carports.
But I have to say, as much as this is shocking, when he says carports for electric vehicles, so that's bad? Is it ever going to be brought up how much money was paid to subsidize like Elon Musk's electric vehicles, like that we paid in tax credits? Or we just like conveniently ignore that? That's fake. Pete Buttigieg debunked it. This is $7.5 billion. Man, this number just goes everywhere. U.S. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg has not spent $7.5 billion on 8 electric vehicle charging stations, contrary to suggestions online. Social media posts misrepresent the total funds set aside under the 2021 Infrastructure and Jobs Act to build a network of thousands of EV chargers by 2030. Facebook post shared the caption, Pete Buttigieg will leave his post having spent $7.5 billion to build 8 EV charging stations. Michael Roll, a former Republican state senator, aka traitor to the country, don't care. This passed in 2021. It allocated $7.5 billion to increase the number of charging points on interstate highways for electric cars, and $5 billion is distributed through the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program. Another $2.5 billion was earmarked for the Charging and Fueling Infrastructure Discretionary Grant Program. According to a spokesperson, programs linked to the law funded 243 public charging ports that were operational this year across 14 U.S. states. There are projects for 24,800 federally funded charging ports underway across the country. A breakdown of the annual fund allocation to various states under the NEVI program shows that spending is projected to reach $2.39 billion by the end of 2024 when Buttigieg's term comes to an end. But these projections were updated in 2022 and do not reflect the final funds dispersed.
I wasn't surprised. I thought that effectively our entire system had been turned into a racket and that we were basically being fed a cover story from it. And it's weird to now have the evidence of this, but I think it was apparent that whatever had taken over our system wasn't interested in the well-being of average people, that it was interested in the power of the state to take people's resources and redistribute them, and that really is what's been going on for most of our adult lives.
And it's also important to note that this progressive, left-leaning, like radical left arm of the government, of the country, was manufactured.
Yes.
It's all manufactured. It's all manufactured and supported. It's not organic, which is really fascinating about the other side, because the other side, the reaction to it is organic. Like, say what you want about the Trump administration and what you think about him. That was an organic shift where people were like, enough.
So organic, bro. As Elon Musk literally buys X to shill for fucking conservatism. Nice.
Enough.
Yes, it was an overdue reaction.
Yeah.
The cover story that what we were up to was righting past wrongs was so pernicious and pervasive that it was hard to get our footing to challenge it.
Right.
But it shouldn't really be surprising that that movement wasn't organic. Of course it was induced. It was a cover story for theft. And we're going to be waking up to the magnitude of that theft for quite some time.
I think this is going to take years. Chamath said that it's going to be like Iran-Contra on steroids. That's what he said. He said when you get to the bottom of all this, it's going to be insane because they haven't even got to the Medicaid yet. They haven't even got to the medical stuff. There's so much they haven't even tapped into where they think the real motherload of fraud is.
Yes, and I must say that there is also another aspect to this which we have to be careful about, which is that the...
Why not start there? If that's what you think the mother of all fraud is, why not start there then? What?
The justifiable anger at discovering what it is that we've been dragged into as a nation is going to make it hard to see where the limits ought to be in terms of upending this stuff. In other words, at the moment, I'm cheering for the wrecking ball.
Right.
Break this stuff up.
Yeah.
Never again. But there are...
What's that, Jamie?
I was reading an article about the spending on the Chargers. They said that they haven't actually, according to this, they haven't actually spent all that money yet.
Well, what do they do with it?
Wait, how has Jamie not been f***ing kicked out of this program? Oh no. Jamie's bringing up, hey bro, this money is just allocated. It's not actually spent yet.
They've spent some of it to make some of those things, but it's just that hasn't been allocated yet. It's a long article going through all the spending that's been done. It's on fact check.
Wait. Oh yeah, I was going to say, wait, but who's the article? Fact check. Sounds like liberal bias. I'm going to rely on Brett. Can you please come out here and let them know that fact checkers are liberally biased, please?
Fact.org.
Factcheck.org. Who runs that?
Some of the
Who runs Benny Johnson? Wasn't he one of those guys getting paid out by f***ing Russia? Really makes you think.
chargers have been made. Some of them are on the way to be made, and they've built 61 at 15 stations since mid-August, or through mid-August. 14,900 more are currently in some stage of development. But that's where it goes into like where they are, what they have to be done, and who's getting the money from them. It has to be done through a long process from each state.
Yeah, the question is, how can we get a proper accounting? As you point out, who the hell is factcheck.org?
Well, that's the problem with fact-checking organizations. That should really be illegal. Like, I think if you're a problem with fact-checking organizations, that should really be illegal. Like, I think if you're a fact-checking organization, we should have stringent rules on what influence is.
Oh! We do care about fake news and curbing freedom. Oh, shit, they've come around to my position. Nice. Wow. Okay. Kill me, bro.
Being peddled, like who's paying for these fact checkers, who's behind the scenes, what is the it should be very transparent. How did you determine whether or not this was true or false? You know, because there are a lot of things that get said. Like, I don't know if you saw this, but Elizabeth,
Have you seen the Joe Rogan podcast?
Warren got confronted, and it's on Twitter this morning. She got confronted about the amount of money that she's received from pharmaceutical drug companies. She said she's never received any money from pharmaceutical drug companies and never received any monies from any PACs. And then, of course, underneath it, Community Notes strikes again. And, of course, she received millions.
Yeah.
She's a f***ing liar.
Well, and it's an arms race.
Where is this? I want to see this Community Notes tweet that Rogan is talking about.
RFK Jr. Big Pharma since 2020. The reason why you don't want RFK Jr. suing Big Pharma? Is that why?
Check the website. I don't take contributions from Big Pharma executives. I don't take any corporate PAC money. And you and your allies already know that.
Senator Elizabeth Warren has in fact received millions of dollars in donations from PAC organizations. Wait, did she say in here that she doesn't take donos from any kind of PAC at all?
Big Pharma since 2020. The reason why you don't want RFK Jr. suing Big Pharma? Is that why?
Check the website. I don't take contributions from Big Pharma executives. I don't take any corporate PAC money. And you and your allies already know that.
Persist PAC, a super PAC that officially formed several days before the Nevada caucuses to support Warren's campaign, announced Thursday it would spend $9 million in advertising across television markets in 3 Super Tuesday states. What does the relationship look like between what's the distinction between a super PAC and a corporate PAC? A super PAC, I don't think has to declare anything because they're like a totally separate thing. They have way less rules around how they spend their money and like report their shit. like, I don't think super PACs have to report who's donating to them, but they also can't work with any candidates explicitly. So a super PAC wouldn't necessarily. I'm curious if there are like any official like PACs that she works with. These are all going to be super PACs then. Nobody knows the difference between a super PAC and a PAC, so it's basically the same, I guess, to community notes. Okay, good one. Nice.
Received any monies from any PACs. And then, of course, underneath it, community notes strikes again. And of course, she received millions.
Yeah.
She's a liar.
Like, this statement is just retarded. You can't, as a candidate, receive money from a super PAC. That's not how super PACs work. If a candidate is explicitly receiving money from a super PAC, by definition, it can't be a super PAC because they're not allowed to coordinate with candidates like that. But that's fine. We don't care about any of being correct or knowing anything about
pharmaceutical drug companies, and never received any monies from any PACs. And then, of course, underneath it, community notes strikes again. And of course, she received millions.
Yeah.
She's a liar.
Well, and it's an arms race. How can pharma cloak the money that it's?
But they spend it on behalf of their interests? Yeah, but you can't do anything about that. What do you mean? I could right now make a super PAC called Pedophiles for Trump. I can make that super PAC and raise a whole bunch of money and go and buy ads for Trump. There's literally nothing that Trump can do about it.
Elizabeth Warren is confronted, or Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders was hilarious. Only 1.5 billion. Only 1.5 million out of 200 million. Only 1.5.
Yep, that's what I saw
First
as
he
well.
tried to say nothing. Only the hardworking people in this country gave me money.
Well, I don't think the Democrats understand that it's over, and that there was a vast infrastructure that made their feeble arguments viable, and that infrastructure is now collapsing. People are far more aware, and their lives aren't going to function anymore.
Well, it makes sense now that we're seeing these numbers because, okay, this was what was funding the infrastructure. Now we get it. Because it wasn't, otherwise, it's organic. This is the will of the people. This is how people are moving. It's not. It wasn't that at all. This was all organic, and it was really about control and money. It had nothing to do with helping people.
If you want to know who enjoys structural support, it's the Republicans via the Senate and the Electoral College, but okay.
Making people better, giving aid to foreign countries. That's all a cloak and dagger bullshit show. The reality was it's about money.
Yeah, it's
money and
always
influence.
It's always about power and limited resources.
Yeah.
And
Wow. And who's got all the billionaires right now? So organic.
this was a new game taking place at a level that was hard to believe, and therefore many of us couldn't see it.
Did you see how they used software to map out 55,000 different NGOs that were used as a branch of the democratic system?
No, I didn't catch that.
I could send it to you. I think I sent it to you, Jamie, right? We went over it on the podcast before. It's so nutty that this was all kind of like hidden until they started using software to try to like figure out like, well, and map out where all the influence goes. And the crazy thing about the NGOs, and this is one of the things that Mike Benz has gone like so deep into it, it's essentially like they contribute to the Democratic Party, the government pays them. It's like, it's all this like weird sort of like circular money transfer thing that's out in the open.
No, it's a positive feedback. The whole idea is power is utilized to free resources that garner more power, and it is the exact inverse of the system that we are supposed to have.
Yeah. It's very interesting.
Where we're headed, that's a harder question.
Where we're headed is we're going to own Gaza.
Somehow.
This is it. So Fractal Technology maps previously hidden connections between 55,000 liberal NGOs, revealing how tax dollars allegedly flowed through major institutions like Vanguard and Morgan Stanley to groups like the Chinese Progressive Association. This breakthrough tracking system can now monitor every dollar going to every NGO, exposing intricate funding webs that traditional tech couldn't detect. So, example, Black Voters Matter Fund's $4 million distribution network was invisible until quantum mapping revealed dozens of subsidiary organizations.
We needed quantum mapping to find holding companies? Wait, what the fuck? Oh my. I feel like I'm watching like a supercut of all the most retarded right-wing propaganda points, but it's not. We're just 15 and a half minutes into... Watch this. Wait, is this the fractal, the quantum?
We are Common Sense Elections, and you can find us at stopfundingleftistngos.com. This is the second video we have done on the 65 Project. In the first video, we reviewed some of the funding that went to the 65 Project. After we did that, we got a message from someone who was involved in the 65 Project, and they said, could we track an organization called States United Democracy Center? Who is States United Democracy Center? And that's what we're going to do here, and we're going to do it using advanced quantum technology from Fractal. Here, we are going to use the Fractal Dark Money Tracking System, which is a fractal system.
Please say AI. Please say AI. Please, 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 please.
System tracking NGOs, every NGO in America, every director, every address, every employee, and we're going to go track some NGOs tied to the 65 Project. Here, we are at the States United Democracy Center. So now let's go take a look at these folks, and we're going to track them with our fractal technology. So the first thing that we can see is that these folks get $4.9 million, and they're only down for 1 year. So we're going to look at where they get their money from. Now we can see that this organization gets its money from Fidelity Investments, from Schwab.
This sounds like some guy that learned how to use Excel. What? Like, what do we, what?
From the Silicon Valley Foundation, and from Morgan Stanley Global Impact Funding. The question that we have now is, where did these groups get their money? Because as we talked about in the last video, one of the things that happens is that the money that comes from Fidelity and from Schwab and Morgan Stanley doesn't necessarily originate there. That money can come from a lot of other places. Here, let me give you an example.
He's not just going to click this and then see what their money sources are and assume that because it goes from one to the next, that the next to the next is connected, right? Like if I were to pay some Chinese software developer $50 for a Steam game, and then somebody said, let's see where Destiny gets his money from. And then you find out that, like, when I was filling my gas tank up, driving to Jerusalem, a friend gave me, you know, $50 for gas. And it's like, we can see that Israel directly funds Chinese software acquisition through Destiny GG LLC. Like, is it that? I know that's not on the level of fucking retardation that we're doing here, right?
Here we are looking at Fidelity, and we're going to look now at the $9 billion that Fidelity has in this account to give to other organizations. And the question we're going to ask is, where does that $9 billion come from?
Okay.
And the answer is that $9 billion comes from a lot of other organizations. It comes from the National Philanthropic Trust, from Schwab, from Silicon Valley Foundation. Now, if you remember, earlier in this video, we saw that Schwab and Silicon Valley Foundation are organizations who are receiving money as well as getting money. So one of the things you're going
They're receiving and getting money?
to see as we go through these videos is that the money is flying back and forth between organization A to organization B to organization C and then back to organization A again.
Why the fuck would you even do this? This sounds like the worst. This is like the...
Boom! Okay. Hey,
We
I
did
think
it.
we made every single one of our Patty's dollars back,
You're
buddy.
damn right. Thus creating the self-sustaining economy we've been looking for.
That's right.
How much fresh cash did we make?
Fresh cash.
Yes.
Well, zero. Zero if you're talking about U.S. currency. People didn't really seem interested in spending any of that.
That's okay. So when they run out of the booze, they'll come back in and they'll have to buy more Patty's dollars.
Right.
Keeping it moving.
That is assuming, of course, that they will come back here and drink.
They will. They will, because we'll redistribute these to the shanties, thus ensuring them coming back in, keeping the money moving.
Well, no, but if we just redistribute these, then people will continue to drink for free.
Okay.
How does this work, Mac?
The money keeps moving in a circle.
But we don't have any money. All we have is this.
Like, what's the point of sending the money back and forth at all? What's the point here? Why?
So in many cases, you're going to see that one organization gives money to the other, and then the other gives money back to that organization. So we can see right here that there are 106 different groups that give money in this particular year to the Fidelity Group. One of those is Silicon Valley Community Foundation, which we're going to look at here in a little bit more depth in just a moment. So let's scroll down and see some of these organizations. And as we scroll down, we can see that one of the organizations that is tied to Fidelity is the Tides Foundation. You will remember that when we did the Tides Foundation earlier in some of our other videos, you will see that the Tides Foundation is tied to just about every major leftist organization out there, and that the Tides Foundation, through some of its subsidiaries, is tied to the Chinese Progressive Association. Another organization that is giving money to Fidelity is the National Philanthropic Trust. Let's go see where they get their money from. We are here at the National Philanthropic Association, and you can see they have $5 billion in this particular fund. Let's go see where that money came from. Here it is. It came from Fidelity. So we have Fidelity.
Why is the money why is it just going around in circles? What's the point? This is the dumbest financial analysis of anything in the fucking universe.
Fidelity giving money to these groups, and these groups giving money back to Fidelity. And you're going to see
why though. I want Joe Rogan or Brett to just explain what the point is. Tell me what the point is.
The unprecedented example, Black Voters Matter Fund's $4 million distribution network was invisible until quantum mapping revealed dozens of...
Invisible? It sounds like all of these listings are public. Where are they getting the information from?
Subsidiary organizations. The unprecedented mapping reveals a previously hidden web of financial relationships. And that's what it's really all about. And
yes. The problem is, sometimes when I see like a list of preposterous scientific projects that have gotten big grants, I read it and I think, they all sound preposterous, but I don't know. Some of these things are likely to have had a good explanation, and it just is not apparent in the soundbite. And some of them are every bit as preposterous as they seem. Okay. And so I can't look at a map like that and say what I would expect if the system was healthy. So I'm cautious about it. I don't think the system was healthy. I think the system was a racket from one end to the other. And I've been saying that we've been living in the era of malignant governance where there's basically no element of this you couldn't turn off and make us better. But we have to be suspicious also of our understanding of how a properly functioning system would graph in something like that, so that we don't overrun the train station when we get there.
Right.
And I will just say, I was talking to a friend of mine who runs an Alaska Native corporation, which I don't know if we've talked about Alaska Native corporations before.
Hold on. This is a really good schizo message, right? This doesn't make any sense, right? Destiny, what do you mean? It's so the old algorithms, which were used to analyze these transactions, used to spend hours going around in circles, running out of memory, hiding the transactions from the systems. This makes perfect sense if you know anything about computers and finite space mappings between discrete systems. True. I actually do that between all of my financial fraud connections. I have it so that on the first of the year, we send each other $50 each back and forth, so that when the systems try to analyze all of our transactions, they get stuck in the loop back and forth. I also write like the colon whatever drop table in my memos for every single transaction, just on the off chance that somebody didn't sanitize their inputs when they're trying to hack my f***ing bank data.
But this is
fuck the Fed.
A corporation, it competes for federal contracts. It has some advantages in the competition for federal contracts, and all of the profits go to Alaska Natives. And it is finding itself in a very difficult to navigate.
Maybe it's called quantum because the same money is in two different places at the same time.
Battle because of all of the successes of Doge. So the Alaska Native Corporation is utilizing something called the 8A program. The 8A program is a program that gives advantages to disadvantaged people. And at some point, that ability to use the 8A program was granted to Alaska Native corporations. Well, the 8A program is now under attack by some large corporations, federal contractors who do not like competition from things like Alaska Native corporations. And it is being portrayed as if it was based on race, which it isn't. Anybody can use it. It's not a race-based program. But because people are in a mood to dismantle all of this left-wing solution-making corruption, these mega corporations are finding it easy to target the 8A program, and they are persuading members of Congress that it doesn't belong. And this is going to be a tragic loss if this program, which works well, is dismantled in the fervor to go after all of the stuff that should never have been.
What does this program do exactly?
It provides a mechanism for disadvantaged people to compete for grants. It's really not racist.
Oh, nice. He found a single program that he likes, and now that he read into it a little bit, he wants to defend it. Cute.
Spaced. Anybody, you know.
So you just have to live in Alaska?
No. So they're two separate things. Alaska Native corporations are for Alaska Natives.
Right. When you say Alaska Natives, you mean people who live in Alaska or
No.
Inuits?
I mean Arctic peoples.
Arctic peoples.
Yes.
So the original people of Alaska before we bought it for $50 from the Russians.
Exactly. We bought it for $50 from the Russians, and then after the discovery of oil in Prudhoe Bay, the U.S. government realized that it could not afford to give the natives of Alaska sovereign land rights because it was going to need to do things like put a pipeline to transport oil. So instead of giving them reservations and sovereign land rights, it gave them some abilities to compete for federal contracts as Alaska Native corporations. So it's an interesting program that does a lot of good.
Wow. You should look into all the other programs with this level of curiosity.
But its connection to the 8A program now has the good that it does in jeopardy. And I don't know how many stories there are like that, but we need to be careful that our excitement about watching all of this nonsense torn apart doesn't cause us to tear apart things that actually are functioning well and don't suffer from the defects of the DEI madness.
Got it. So this thing that allows disadvantaged people to get grants, how's it structured?
Oh, that I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
That I couldn't tell you. We could look into it. It's easy to look up. It's the 8A program.
Helps small businesses owned by socially and economically disadvantaged individuals to compete for federal contracts, provides training and technical assistance to help businesses compete, categorizes eligible businesses as veteran-owned, women-owned, minority-owned, or owned by a person with disabilities. Certification does not guarantee contract awards, but it can help businesses pursue new opportunities. So this is a question, right? The categories like veteran-owned, woman-owned, and minority-owned. Why is that?
Ooh, uh-oh. Brett's not about to defend some DEI shit. Oh, no. Oh, no.
Why is woman-owned and minority-owned? Why would they, you know what I mean? That's one, especially women-owned.
I do. Is this Grok? Is that what you're looking at there?
So that is? Oh, so that's Google. Benefits for Native-owned businesses. Program helps Native communities develop economic ventures that support their communities. Profits generated from a Native-owned participant go back to their Native communities. Yeah.
So I'm not in a position to answer detailed questions about 8A, but
kill me.
What I would say is
there are some good things.
There are quite a number of success stories that this is exactly what we want for disadvantaged people.
Right, we want a real
mechanism.
social safety net. Yeah.
Not only a social safety net, but something that provides an opportunity. Hey, build a business. Right. This is what we want you to do. This is the mythology of our system. Is pull yourself out of your disadvantaged state.
Yes.
So that you don't need help.
Yeah.
So anyway, we should be interested in maintaining those programs at the same time we find the stuff that's actual nonsense.
So Brett's got a friend that probably benefits a lot from this program. That's what I'm hearing here, probably, right?
Nonsense, and get rid of it as quickly as possible. And that's going to be a delicate balance. So far, we're early in this process, and you're going to have big wins like the revelations about USAID. But the day will come soon enough when we're talking about discussions where we actually have to do a cost-benefit analysis on the programs that are targeted.
Right, and we have to realize that there are programs that benefit people greatly and are really good for the entire country as a whole.
Absolutely.
And
we should put together a body of people to deliberate on whether we should actually give money to these programs. Like they could be Congress.
That's like the problem when you if you're a left-wing progressive person like we both sort of identified with up until a while ago, and then all of a sudden the entire country takes a polar shift. You don't want to lose your own ideas about what's important and what things that we should contribute to with our tax dollars. Because I think we both agree that there's a lot of good in taking taxes and providing social safety nets, providing food for poor people and homeless people, helping people, welfare. All these things are important for to not have people starving on your streets. All that stuff is if we're going to have a community, which is essentially what a country is supposed to be, an enormous community. We have to support the members of our community. We just have to do it without grifters and do it without bullshit and do it without it being just a cleverly disguised ruse in order to gain political power.
Well, you may remember years ago I used to say that I want to live in a country so good that I get to be a conservative. Right? I'm a liberal because there's a lot of problems with the way our system works, but the objective of all of that progressivism ought to be a system that doesn't require intervention in that way, in which everybody does have access to the market, and so people really can be responsible for lifting themselves out of whatever.
Literally, the rising tide lifts all boats, which should be everybody's thought process.
Yeah, a fair system in which everybody starts out with the tools that allow them to take advantage of the market.
Crazy.
That's great, and I want a system in which lazy people don't have money to spend and are motivated to become unlazy. I don't want people profiting from destroying opportunities that belong to other people. But if we had a system that was like that and everybody had the tools to utilize it, then we should want as little intervention as possible.
Yeah. Wild times. Just wild. What a fun time to be alive.
It just feels different. I have to tell you, I don't know what's coming, but it's at least delightful not to know what to think.
Yeah.
Right. The cynicism that was required to understand what was going on 2 months ago is now no longer required. You actually have to think about what you're told is coming down the pike and think, well, I don't know, is that a solution? Is it a negotiating tactic, or is it a solution that's actually being proposed, and would it work? And
right, like, are we really taking over Gaza, or is this just a bullshit marketing ploy? Like, what is this, like some negotiation tactic with Israel? Like, what? Because like the look on Netanyahu's face when Trump was talking about taking over Gaza, it was like, what? You could see his face. He was just like, what the fuck are you saying?
I have to say, I almost feel like it was worth the price of admission right there.
Just to watch his face? Yeah, like you want to let us in? Oh, you want us help? Okay, we're going to set up bases there. And instead of, someone was describing this on Twitter, instead of a response time to any action Israel takes taking days, it takes minutes.
Well, I am not a fan of Netanyahu's, as you probably know. My sense is that the relationship of Netanyahu to the Israeli population is more or less like the Biden administration to the U.S. population.
Well, they were
not on the same team.
You also don't have to have an opinion on anything. Like, if you don't know anything about what you're talking about, like, you can just do that, You can just not have an opinion on things. It's okay.
Even more against it because they were protesting in the street, hundreds of thousands of people up until October 7th. That was one of the reasons, apparently, why they...
Is there no legal obligation to give money allotted to programs from Congress? Does the president have deference to decide what gets funded, even if Congress specifically sets aside what? No, the president is supposed to. The president doesn't get to decide where to allocate the money. That's Congress's decision.
They think they got their pants down, or they got caught with their pants down on October 7th because they had so many troops that were around these protests. So they had hundreds of thousands of people protesting in the streets because Netanyahu was trying to expand his powers.
And this just so happened to put him back in charge. But in any case, to see him back on his heels, that was a good sign. Now, I
thought it was that they were too busy enforcing dumb shit in the West Bank, and they were just not responsive enough. Were there protests on the day of October 7th? I don't remember this being a huge thing, but okay.
I'm, of course, concerned about the idea of, I'm not even sure I know what I heard, right? We're going to make Gaza into...
Going to be the Riviera of the Middle East.
Pretty good impression.
The Riviera of the Middle East. Oh, my God. What a crazy time. And just to see all these politicians freaking out, that is amazing, too. It's really amazing. It's amazing to watch. It's amazing to watch all these left-wing people suddenly. Bernie Sanders making a post about how Donald Trump is trying to silence independent media was the wildest fucking gaslighting I think I've ever seen from a politician. Independent media? You mean fucking CBS? You mean CBS that edited that Kamala Harris interview to make it look like she had a really good point?
100%. And then I don't know if you caught Alex Soros reposting this claim that basically you have an unelected cabal wielding power. I mean, that's
you. Yeah, that's you, Alex. That's your dad. This is crazy.
Yeah, no, it's a very, very strange historical moment.
Also, it's like you haven't addressed any of the exposed corruption. All you're talking about is the horrors of dismantling this amazing organization. What about all the shit that they've uncovered? There's not even a counter argument. Like, no, we need to fund gender fluid dance in fucking Turkey. Like, what are you talking about? We need $200 million for Starbucks Keurig cups. What?
Well, I mean, again, I said a lot of stuff over the years about...
Can't wait for those charges, those criminal charges from all the fraud going on. I'm sure they're on the way.
The fact that our civilization had become a racket.
Yeah.
And the fact that we were living in the era of malignant governance, and that basically I'm concerned as somebody who believes in good governance that there's almost no component of this that you couldn't remove and create an improvement, that's not a message you want.
Right.
I want a message in which we govern as lightly as possible, but we do it really, really well. And an era in which you can cut off any limb and the patient gets healthier, that teaches the wrong lesson about governance. It teaches the lessons that governance was a mistake to begin with, which it wasn't.
Right.
So
it's a big weekend. Get in on the action of the big game. And
I can't believe this lazy fuck uses AI to do his ad reads. I hate him so much.
7 series by Jared
involved
EKNG.co/audio.
Well, how do we get money out of governance? Because that's the problem, right? Is money gets involved in governance, especially enormous amounts of money, and then they have influence. And then you have senators and congressmen and different elected representatives that don't do the will of the people. They do the will of the people that paid them enormous...
Oh, thank God. All right, now we're getting to the ideas part. Here we go. Let's go. I can't wait to hear this one.
Amounts of money. And this is a real problem. Because if it was just the only way you could win was you had to do for the will of the people. You had to literally do things that were better for the people. The people realize you're doing a great job, and they keep electing you.
Well, let's be honest about what the conservatives had right from the get-go. There are problems that only competition solves. There are other problems that competition in something like a market is not well positioned to solve, but there's certain problems that there's no second best. It's only competition that works. And so when we talk about, well, what are we going to do for fact-checking? We're going to abandon the idea of fact-checking. What you want is a vibrant, independent journalist sector in which people who spot the story early and people who articulate the story in the most intuitive and accurate way.
This has nothing to do with this. I also don't like people that talk about free markets or capitalism. I don't know anything about economics. Well, community notes is competition, but fact checking isn't competition because why? How do you even, like, are there not multiple fact checkers that compete with each other? Is it as soon as you have an employee, is that no longer competition or free market? Like, what a stupid fucking point. That's such a brainless thing to say.
Outcompete those who do a worse job, so that over time what we get is journalism that you can't fool.
Right.
And that it reveals to us which government programs actually work, even if they don't sound reasonable at first glance. Here's what's
I wonder if this fucking retard, through any of his fucking podcasts or any of the stupid shit he said, has ever quoted that, what's that? Truth is not decided by consensus or whatever. That just because a bunch of people say something is true doesn't make it true. Like, I wonder if this guy he feels like a Redditor that would say that at some point. Like, but I guess when it comes to community notes, whew.
Really going on behind the scenes in this program, right? And then journalism that exposes any kind of fraud. And I don't know about you, but as I was watching confirmation hearings, my sense was that the Elizabeth Warrens and the Bernie Sanders were dinosaurs who do not understand that the Earth has just been hit from outer space and that they don't live in the world that they are so used to. That their corruption was immediately apparent. And they're not used to that. They're used to having a whole phony journalistic layer that covers for them.
Right.
And that layer is gone, and the American public is awake, and it's angry, and rightfully so. And now it looks at Bernie Sanders, who, I remember the first time you and I spoke, you and I had both been Sanders supporters.
Yeah.
And now to see that same guy going after Bobby Kennedy, and, the feeble excuse, well, what if Bobby Kennedy becomes the head of HHS and people don't have access to prescription drugs? And it's like, dude, I just lived through COVID. It's not obvious to me that they wouldn't get healthier if they didn't have access to prescription drugs. Do you realize how corrupt...
I thought he did the thing. I was about to do where the puck is instead of where it's going to be. He just did the thing. I was going to pause. And I was going to say, he's going to say that RFK would never touch pharmaceuticals. Of course he would never touch our drugs. But he didn't say that. He actually said, yeah, maybe he will take the drugs away, and maybe that'll make us even healthier. As the retard across the seat from him, or across the table, is literally huffing on a cigar at the same time. Kill me.
Lived through COVID. It's not obvious to me that they wouldn't get healthier if they didn't have access to prescription drugs. Do you realize how corrupt those companies are and how nonsensical their science is? The science that says that you actually get better if you...
Wait. The companies are corrupt? I thought that the free market and competition and the marketplace of ideas, isn't this capitalism for these big pharmaceutical companies, or is it not capitalism for them, or...
I just lived through COVID. It's not obvious to me that they wouldn't get healthier if they didn't have access to prescription drugs. Do you realize how corrupt those companies are and how nonsensical their science is? The science that says that you actually get better if you take a statin based on some metric in your chart, right? So I'm not arguing.
As opposed to looking at your chakra, or no offense, Dr. K, I love you. Or what are we? No more heart medication, no more insulin, no more Ozempic for these fucking conservatives. All of them should be banned from taking any of these medicines, and no Viagra and Cialis. Take that away as well.
Arguing that there aren't good pharmaceuticals. There undoubtedly are. But what's the net effect of our pharmaceutical-obsessed medical culture? It's not.
Oh, there's also this awkward thing where you have to look to your god, Jordan Peterson, and you have to regurgitate every single talking point that he has. Remember, it's like the human centipede, okay? But there's like 100 of them. And they switch heads every now and then. And Jordan Peterson is that one. He's the first big conservative that I recall hearing on this stupid fucking show. That talking point of like, well, maybe drugs or maybe all of medicine has done more harm than good since its inception. Because medical malpractice has killed 14 billion children a year. And now everybody has to repeat that point.
But what's the net effect of our pharmaceutical-obsessed medical culture? It's not obvious to me that it's positive. I think it may well be negative. And so anyway, I see Bernie Sanders and I see him reading from a script that is no longer relevant to the movie we're watching.
Right, and this is not saying that there aren't some...
True, Jeremiah Smith. Nobody's making you take any of these medicines. If you don't want to, you can just not do it. You don't have to take. No one's forcing you to take any of this medication. They don't worry. They got rid of the vaccine mandates. I guess if you want to go to public school, there's some, but you don't have to take any of the pharmaceutical drugs. If you don't want, just don't. You don't have to. You don't even have to go to a doctor. Just don't.
Pharmaceutical drugs that are amazing. The problem is they're not all amazing, and they sell them all like they're amazing.
Absolutely.
That's the problem. Some of them are great. Like Viagra is fantastic. Like, it's really good stuff.
Oh my God. I hate my life. Kill me, bro.
Just stuff like that really works. There's a bunch of drugs that really help people. There's a bunch of drugs that brilliant scientists have developed that definitely help people live longer and live healthier lives. But also, they're in the business of selling medicine, selling pharmaceutical drugs. And so there's a lot of stuff that they sell that is not good for you. Overall net negative. When you look at the amount of drugs that get pulled, that get endorsed and then supported by the FDA, and then they have to pull them, wasn't it like 30%? Something in the range?
30% of FDA-approved drugs get pulled? That sounds like a really high number. The FDA doesn't approve that many drugs, no? What is the... How many drugs does the FDA pull? 1,284 drugs are recalled every year. Doesn't the FDA only approve? Am I making this up? I thought it was like 62 things a year or something. Is this talking about something different? It takes the FDA 46 months to withdraw a failed drug with accelerated approval. The accelerated approval program serves a key role by getting promising drugs to patients faster. The program, created during the HIV/AIDS crisis in '92, focuses on diseases with unmet needs and approves drugs based on surrogate endpoints, a shrinking tumor or lower biomarkers. So this says 20 to 25% of drugs are withdrawn, which is on the accelerated approval program. And this basically sounds like it's a program where it's like when you're in house and they're like, there is no treatment for this right now, but there's like an experimental drug. So if 20 to 25% get withdrawn from the accelerated approval program, I'm so curious where they're getting that 30% withdraw. Oh, also, I think you withdraw I think that you withdraw a drug when a better one is made as well. Like I think if they make a drug that, let's say there's a disease that has like an 80% fatality rate, and then you create a drug and it lowers it to like a 40% fatality rate, and then a new drug is made that's like a 1% fatality rate, I think they withdraw the other drug, I believe. If one that's just like flat out better and not like absurdly expensive or whatever. Whereas nearly 2,500 medicines have been approved by the FDA or marketed in the United States, a comparatively small number have been withdrawn from the market as part of its mission to provide transparency about the pharmaceutical industry. CRIB is initiating a program to catalog medicines withdrawn from the market and to assess the reasons for this action. Below is a list of notable drugs withdrawn by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. Oh, the thalidomide was a big one in 57. Phenylpropanolamine. Propanolamine, fuck me, in 2000. Rofecoxib, 2004. Three in 2010, 4 in 2010.
Yes, and that is the tip of the iceberg. We do not have, just as we don't have a journalistic layer that exposes people in Congress who are lying to us and aspects of the government that are corrupt, we don't have a university system that can properly do science and can be relied on to tell us what the impact of a drug or a food additive is. Right? The whole system is missing in action.
Right. The whole system.
Impact of have a university system that can properly do science and can be relied on to tell us what the impact of a drug or a food additive is. Right?
What then? Okay.
The whole system is missing in action.
Right. The whole system is paid for by the pharmaceutical drug companies. They pay for tests. They pay for studies. They support organizations that are supposed to be regulating them.
Who's supposed to pay for a private company to research their drug? Do we pay for it? Or how does that, who's supposed to pay for the research? Like, if I want to go and figure out if my drug is safe or not, do I make the government pay for it? Or who's paying for the research? Like,
the whole thing is bananas.
Everything that is supposed to evaluate something like safety or efficacy or analyze net effects, anything like that, has been captured by the PR wing. And so the consumer is in no position to navigate a world like that. I mean, and we know that this encompasses everything. You know, how many people's doctors are pharma skeptical? Right? Your doctor should be very pharma skeptical. I don't know that this drug is actually a benefit to you, but know that the doctors have become pushers.
Right. Because they've been compromised. And also, I mean, that's literally the system that they're created from. Like they're sent out.
Remember, all of these fucking retards, when they got COVID, probably doctor shopped to try to get fucking ivermectin prescribed to them, right? That's what we saw. That's what happened with Tim Pool talks about getting COVID. Well, I'm not going to be able to find the fucking episode. when Tim said that he called somebody or his hospital, and he was like, "Hey, I think I'm sick," and then they were like, "Well, if you got COVID, you probably just need to drink water and rest." And then he shopped around until he found somebody to give him ivermectin. Like, good job.
Into the hospitals immediately with that. And it's so difficult for a doctor to step outside the system and be independent. When they do, they get attacked. Like, how many doctors lost their licenses because they were trying to prescribe ivermectin to people who had COVID?
Yeah.
Kill me. Also, did a single doctor lose their license? Hold on. Is there a single doctor that lost their license just for off-label prescribing ivermectin? Because you can off-label prescribe shit if you want, right? I don't know if there are bad side effects to it. Are there examples of this?
Almost all of the doctors who were any good found themselves chased out of a job or with jeopardy to their license or slandered in the media. And, you know, I'm sure you're in the same position. Those are frankly the only doctors I trust at this point were the ones who were willing to pay a price to tell me the truth.
Yeah, yeah. My doctor that I know out here won a case, but they were about to lose.
Pennsylvania doctor accused of prescribing ivermectin for COVID is fired. Tower Health Medical Group said in a statement that it learned of the allegations on Wednesday after investigation. The doctor's complaint was terminated effective immediately. A Pennsylvania doctor accused of prescribing ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine knives to treat COVID-19. Drew drugs regulators called not safe for treating the disease. Was fired this week, a regional health system said. I think hydroxychloroquine might be a little bit more serious on the side effect thing. I think the prescription dose for ivermectin, I don't think there are any side effects. Hydroxychloroquine might be a little bit more, but... Dr. Edith Baer who worked for Tower Health, was accused of writing prescriptions for drugs which are not approved for the prevention or treatment of COVID, the company said. What does Tower Health Medical Group mean? Is this just like the name of like somebody that owns a hospital? Where did Trump even get the hydroxychloroquine drug from? He just came out one day and said it. I don't know who started the conspiracies about that. I thought medicine was between a doctor and his patient. I guess not in 2022. Says Puggy Gup says she probably claps along when all the trans shit gets banned. You guys never gave a fuck about medicine being between a doctor and a patient. Please don't ever pretend. Oh my God. Oh, Tower Health is a Pennsylvania-based regional health system that consists of several hospitals, including Phoenixville Hospital. Tower Health said Dr. Baer had failed to meet the requirements, including consulting patients' medical histories for prescribing medication for off-label purposes. At the time, the FDA had warned that the drug could cause serious heart problems for coronavirus patients. I'm pretty sure it came from emails to the White House from Dr. Oz. Well, rip to this person.
Lose their license.
Yeah.
And just for prescribing ivermectin. Here,
I trust at this point were the ones who were willing to pay a price to tell me the truth.
Yeah, yeah. My doctor that I know out here won a case, but they were about to lose their license.
Yeah.
And just for prescribing ivermectin.
The other person got fired. They didn't lose their license, but okay.
No, that should be your first question, Doc, is how did you do over COVID?
Yeah.
And if they have nothing interesting to say, I would just turn around and walk out the door.
Yeah, imagine going to a doctor right now and they're telling you should get your COVID shots. You should stay up to date. Imagine.
I hate these people.
Well, I find that bad, but at least I know how to interpret that. What I don't understand is what I'm supposed to do with a doctor who did recommend the shots, has stopped recommending them, and has not
talked about
said something about the
What, do they need a fucking Twitter account?
change in their perspective.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I have a problem with that with social media influencers too.
100%.
People that were pushing it and then have not publicly corrected course. Have not said I was wrong and this is why I was wrong. Like, I can't fuck with you anymore. If you can't say that you were wrong about that, then I just can't.
100%. It is a test of integrity, and you wouldn't want to go to a doctor that didn't have high integrity at a moment like this. Your doctor needs unusually high levels of integrity, and what we've seen is unusually low levels. And the same thing with social media influencers, as you called them. Anybody in the public sphere should go back and they should do an accounting of what they said, what they thought, how they got there, how that played out in the end, when they changed their mind and what they said about it publicly.
Yeah.
Right? I must say I'm constantly in a battle with the ultra cynics who claim to have gotten everything right during COVID because basically they never believe anything. It's not a method.
You got lucky.
Right, you got lucky. So it happened.
You stumbled into a full con game.
You stumbled into a con game, and yes, you didn't buy it, but that's not a demonstration that you know how to think through the next one.
Right.
Right?
Correct.
It doesn't demonstrate anything.
Right.
So what I really want are people who had a good track record and who know what mistakes they made and know how not to make them in the future. Those are the people that we should be paying attention to.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a fun time, though. It's fun because things are actually happening, which is very different than most of the time when people get elected. Most of the time when people get elected, they claim all these things when they're running for president, then they get into office and not much changes. And in fact, a lot of what they campaigned on, they don't practice at all. Like a great example is the Obama administration. The Hope and Change website had to be changed because there was a bunch of stuff in there about whistleblowers, protecting whistleblowers, which they didn't do at all. They were some of the worst. There was one of the worst administrations for whistleblowers.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, I think what we have seen you and I are about the same age, what we have seen over our entire lifetime is that elections can change the jerseys, but they just swap. You know, who's in power and who's out of power. Well, the point is the system is in power, and the people in the roles to deliver the speeches change, but they're just basically trading off. And so I have the sense that you and I are now watching the outcome of the first genuine election since 1963.
Yeah.
I can't.
The tech community has often talked about, disruption, about, moving fast, breaking things. Do you think that works in the federal government?
Well, we count on the federal government for the safety net, and we're not supposed to have agencies go bankrupt. In the private sector, it's great that companies disappear and other companies take their place. But when you're counting on...
What? Holy shit, wait, didn't I say this 1 week ago? How crazy that one of these retarded fucking tech billionaire dipshits actually demonstrates a fundamental understanding of one of the differences between corporations and government. That a small business or a large business coming and going is fine. It's part of the system. You can't afford to have the government fail. Good point. Good job, Bill.
Have agencies go bankrupt. In the private sector, it's great that companies disappear and other companies take their place. But when you're counting on a department to, say, enforce safety rules, to review drug safety, things like that, you can't take as many risks as you do in the private sector.
The tech